In the last video, we saw how boldly Edward announced Liaris as his fiancée in front of everyone in the hall. Alina was jealous of Liaris, and everyone was gossiping. They were all saying that she was the failure of the Grain family, so how could Edward possibly choose her? At that moment, Liaris's father stepped forward and tried to interrupt Edward, but Edward's intimidating gaze made him stop. He asked her father if there was any problem with him marrying Liaris. Her father was stunned and immediately denied having any objections. Even Liaris was shocked to see her father looking afraid, almost like a child in front of Edward. Edward pulled Liaris closer and told everyone that they were going to marry. So he wanted Liaris's father's blessing as well. Her father had no choice but to accept it. As the head of the Grain family, he gave them his blessing for their marriage. Edward then told his elder brother that he would soon report this announcement to the king, their father. The first prince did not say much, but he gently smiled at Edward. Then he glanced at Liaris and said in a somewhat commanding tone, "Please get along with my younger brother." His intimidating gaze made even Liaris stiffen. Edward then looked at Liaris and told her that they would have another discussion another day. He leaned closer to her as if he were about to kiss her, but he stopped at the last moment and told her that he was looking forward to what was to come. Everyone was shocked. The crowd was stunned, and it was clear that Alina looked extremely jealous of Liaris. Liaris accepted that her fate was about to change forever. Later, Liaris, her sister, and her father returned to their mansion. Her father was still in shock, wondering what in the world was going on. What was Prince Edward thinking? Why had he chosen Liaris instead of Alina? He directly asked Liaris when she had gotten close to Prince Edward. She had barely left the mansion, so how had she even met him? Liaris replied that she did not know what was going on. Edward had not said much to her. He had simply announced that he wanted to be engaged to her. Even so, her father insulted her. He said there must be some kind of hidden agenda or intention behind Edward's choice. Otherwise, why would he choose someone so useless? However, he did not care about the prince's intentions. Through this engagement, their family could gain some influence in the royal family. He even told her that she had finally done something good. Liaris lowered her head and thanked her father. Even though she did not truly feel grateful, they were still planning to use her. They believed that her engagement to Edward would create distance between the first prince, Elisher, and Alina. Her father told her to make sure she supported Alina in any way possible. Liaris replied that she would do her best, but in her mind, she questioned why she continued to obey her father and sister like this. For what purpose was she doing all of this? She remembered what Prince Edward had told her, that if they got married, the people around them would be shocked and shaken. Yet she could clearly see that nothing had changed in her family. Her father and sister were behaving the same as always. They were simply trying to use her. They continued to look down on her and treat her as the incompetent younger sister. After some time that night, Liaris went outside for a short walk. Outside the mansion, Alina called her from behind. Her voice sounded rude as ever. Liaris turned and asked urgently what she wanted. Alina replied coldly, telling her to refuse the engagement with Prince Edward. Liaris was confused and asked why she should turn it down. Alina did not give a clear answer. She simply told her to do as she said and mocked her by saying that a failure like her was not suitable for the prince. Liaris could not believe she would say something like that, but she could clearly see that Alina was speaking out of jealousy. She was jealous that Edward had chosen Liaris over her. Liaris's calm expression only made Alina angrier. Liaris reminded her that if she was engaged to the prince, she could help Alina get closer to the first prince, Elisher. Hearing this, Alina became even more furious. She told Liaris that she did not need her help. She was not like Liaris. She was the chosen one. Both their father and mother had very high expectations of her, and she would meet those expectations. She had lived her entire life that way. She did not need help from an incompetent person like Liaris. After venting her anger, Alina smiled coldly and said that the engagement would not last long anyway. There was no real reason for the prince to pick Liaris. Perhaps he had simply felt pity for her because she was so miserable and weak. Maybe he just wanted her to feel good, even if only for a little while. Liaris understood that Alina was only trying to mock her and say whatever nonsense came to her mind. She remained calm and did not respond. Alina gave a sly smile and said in a very pathetic tone that perhaps Liaris had used her charm to seduce the prince. She even suggested that maybe the prince was simply hungry for women, which was why he had chosen her. Laughing mockingly, she added that perhaps the prince lacked judgment as well. In any case, she ordered Liaris to decline the engagement immediately. Liaris replied coldly, "You look pathetic." She told Alina that her desperation was what truly looked pathetic. She remembered what Edward had told her, that he would change a world that valued only the gifted and make it a place where everyone could live happily and respectfully. Alina was flabbergasted. Liaris had never talked back to her before, so this was shocking. Alina asked angrily if Liaris had just said something to her. Liaris replied, "Is there anyone else here?" Then, with a cold, mocking smile, she repeated that Alina's desperation was pathetic. This angered Alina to the extreme. The surroundings began to shake, and the ground cracked open in front of Liaris. A huge tree emerged from it. Alina was surrounded by a powerful aura, and more trees began rising from the ground. Her eyes burned with fury, as if she were ready to hurt Liaris badly. Alina's power was the ability to manipulate plants at will. She reminded Liaris that she was the only gifted person there, so Liaris should be careful about how she spoke to her. Still, Liaris did not back down. She reminded Alina that she was now the chosen one of Prince Edward and would soon become a member of the royal family. They were no longer the same. Hearing this, Alina completely lost control and launched an attack on Liaris. But this time, Liaris did not act like the incompetent little sister she had always pretended to be. She changed her approach and responded by using her own magic. She summoned plants of her own to counter Alina's attack and stopped it completely. Alina was utterly shocked. Hearing the commotion outside, their father rushed out of the mansion. From a window above, their mother had already been watching everything unfold. With a startled voice, she called her husband and told him to look outside. He saw Alina and Liaris fighting below. Alina could not understand how Liaris was able to use powers, especially the same plant manipulation ability as hers. Liaris laughed and told Alina that no matter how much power she had, she could not defeat her. This made Alina even angrier. More and more trees burst from the ground around Liaris. The trees combined and merged into a massive tree golem standing behind Alina. Alina shouted that there was nothing about Liaris that was better than her. She commanded the tree golem to attack. At the last moment, their father ran out of the mansion and shouted at Alina to stop, but she did not listen. However, the enormous tree golem did not scare Liaris at all. She calmly raised her hand and commanded the golem to scatter. In an instant, it broke apart and disappeared. Everyone watching was confused about how such powerful trees had appeared. Tiredness was visible on Alina's face, but she still refused to back down. She could not understand why she could not control the fight. Liaris replied simply that it was because she was now more powerful than Alina. We then see how Liaris's ability works. In exchange for strengthening another person's power, she can immediately copy their ability whenever she touches them. It had not been long since her powers began developing, and she still did not have full control over them. Every night, she practiced tirelessly to control her power, though she could barely manage the plants at first. Meanwhile, their parents placed immense expectations on Alina, and the pressure was beginning to frustrate her. One day, when Alina was walking down the hallway, a leaf became stuck in her hair. Liaris tried to help by removing it, but Alina smacked her hand away and told her not to touch her. However, during that brief contact, Liaris's hand brushed against Alina's, and her power activated. As a result, Alina's abilities grew stronger. Her manipulation skills improved rapidly, and their parents were overjoyed. Alina, too, was more than satisfied. Now, in the present, Liaris declared that she was disappointed in Alina because she had stopped working hard. She raised her hand, and a massive tree emerged, forming a golem far greater than the one Alina had created. Seeing this, her father, her mother, and even Alina were shocked. It felt as though their souls had left their bodies. Liaris firmly declared that she would become the fiancée of the sixth prince, His Royal Highness Edward. From now on, Everyone around her should behave properly toward her. In her mind, she saw the image of her younger self, crying, branded as incompetent, haunted by a dark past. But that past was now gone. On the other side, we see Edward with his elder brother. The first prince tells Edward that he has turned down every engagement offered to him, yet now he has chosen someone on his own, and that woman is the so-called failure of the Grain family. Edward smiles and assures him that he is certain Liaris is exactly what he needs. The first prince does not fully understand Edward's intentions. Edward confirms that if he and Liaris walk the same path together, no one will be able to harm them, not even the first prince himself. The first prince begins to suspect that Edward has truly taken a liking to Liaris. Edward, on the other hand, seems excited and looks forward to what the future holds for them. The next day, Liaris goes to the prince's castle again. Every time she comes here, she is amazed by its grandeur. She recalls the events of last night and lets out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, she sees Edward approaching from ahead. Feeling shy, Liaris asks him if he came all the way there just to see her. Edward replies in the affirmative and says that he wanted to see his fiancée. The two walk inside hand in hand. Everyone in the hallway turns toward them and greets them respectfully. With all this attention, Liaris feels a little awkward. Edward tells her that she will get used to it soon. Otherwise, she will find herself in trouble. Liaris knows that she now plays an important role in Edward's path to the throne. Every word and action of hers will affect his reputation, so she resolves to be careful and to do whatever she can for him. Edward asks if something happened last night. Liaris tells him that she revealed her powers to her family, and they were surprised by it. However, it did not seem to truly change anything. Edward observes that she does not look happy about what happened, but she does not seem upset either. Liaris replies that she is simply disappointed. She has noticed that she has been looked down upon her entire life by people like her family, and they are not as shaken as she once imagined they would be. She then changes the topic and asks Edward why he called her there. Edward tells her that they are going to the throne room, as he intends to inform his father, the king, about their engagement. Liaris is shocked. A meeting with the king is no small matter. She knows that a prince's fiancé must support the future king, and therefore it is necessary for the current king to personally assess her. Edward leans closer and tells her to be very careful around the king. If the king is displeased with her, the engagement will be called off. And if that happens, she will have to return to her old life. In her mind, Liaris thinks that she has already attracted too much attention. Things are different now, and she has no place to return to. She must prove herself here. They stand before the majestic gates of the king's throne room. Liaris notices that she does not feel nervous at all. Then she recalls that in her dreams, she was once called a queen. It feels as if those dreams belong to a past life. They enter the throne room and greet the king. He tells them to raise their heads. Liaris and Edward stand before the ruler of the land, King Bestion Leviton, who sits high upon his throne. Edward states that he wishes to introduce Liaris to him and that he intends to become engaged to her. He confidently looks straight at his father. Now we learn a little about the history of this kingdom. About 700 years ago, the kingdom of Laban and 3 other small kingdoms fought a long war over territory. The war lasted more than a decade and ended with the victory of Laban. The kingdom was transformed into a great power, conquering all its defeated rivals. At the core of this success were the psychics. The kingdom of Laban maintained its status by actively incorporating exceptionally powerful individuals into the royal lineage. The man sitting before them is the 99th king of the kingdom of Laban. Edward asks whether he has the king's permission to marry Liaris. The king and Edward exchange a meaningful gaze, and Liaris feels that the king intends to test her. The king then asks Liaris whether she has the resolve to bear the weight of the royal family. Liaris answers yes. She has already prepared herself for such questions. However, the king suddenly asks her what she is capable of. He has heard about the Grain twins, and that one of them is considered an imbecile. If Liaris were to join the royal family, it would become her responsibility to help take charge of the kingdom of Laban. The king asked her again whether she was worthy of standing there. With an intense look on his face, he demanded that she answer him. What could she do? Liaris noticed that she was not being looked down upon or judged as useless, as she had been in the past. She was simply being genuinely tested, and she needed to prove her worth to the king. She confidently looked up and said that she would stand by His Highness Prince Edward's side and continue to support him. She promised that together they would make the kingdom stronger and greater, and that the king should watch them and see what they would become. Edward smiled genuinely at her words. The king saw the ambition and determination in Liaris's heart. He smiled and declared that, in that case, he would surely one day proclaim Edward as king. This was the first time a prince had spoken so boldly before him, and he was impressed by her proposal. With a calm smile on his face, he accepted their engagement and told them that he was looking forward to what lay ahead. Edward thanked the king, and they took their leave. Outside in the hallway, Liaris felt relieved that everything was over. However, Edward suddenly burst out laughing. He said it was amusing and that he had never expected her to boldly challenge his father like that. Liaris did not understand what he meant by challenge. She had not intended it that way. Edward explained that speaking like that in front of the current king was almost like declaring that they would eventually take the throne. After thinking about it, Liaris realized that it did sound like a declaration of war. She could not believe she had said something like that in the heat of the moment. But in the end, everything had worked out. Edward had noticed that his father had smiled in public, which meant he approved of Liaris. In his heart, Edward felt he had made the right choice. It did not matter whether Liaris had powers or not. She possessed courage that he did not see in most people. Edward then asked her, teasingly, whether she was truly going to make him king. Liaris had already declared everything in front of the king of the land, so she could not take her words back now. She gave a gentle smile and told him that she would keep her promise, on the condition that he kept his. Edward promised that even people without abilities would be able to live freely in this world. He swore that he would fulfill that promise. They joined hands, united by their shared goals. That was the true essence of their engagement. Liaris then told Edward that she would return home for now, and that if he needed anything, he could call for her. Edward looked confused and told her that her home was here from now on. Liaris did not understand what he meant. He clarified that they were now engaged, and starting today, she would live in the palace. Liaris returned home to pack her belongings. As she prepared, she recalled Edward telling her to come back as soon as possible. After packing everything she needed into a single suitcase, she was ready to leave. Her parents came out and asked where she was going. They had neglected her entire life, but now they were suddenly paying attention to her. They acted as if they cared and asked whether she was going to Prince Edward's residence. They even asked if they could come along, saying that as parents, they should speak to the prince and ask him to take good care of their daughter. Liaris felt annoyed by her father's fake concern. She told him there was no need for them to come. The engagement had already been approved by His Majesty the King himself, and it was not the right time to trouble Edward. Her parents then asked when she would return. Liaris replied that she would not be coming back. From now on, she would live in the palace. They could do whatever they wanted with her room, because she would no longer need it. She opened the door and was about to leave when she suddenly stopped and asked how Alina was doing. They told her that Alina was in her room and had not come out for meals or any other activities since the events of the previous night. Liaris turned back and said goodbye to her parents one last time. She asked them to tell Alina that she said hello. She even thanked them for everything they had done for her, though it was clear from her expression that there was a hint of irony in her words, as they had never truly treated her well. As she stepped outside, a maid came running toward her. It was the maid who had helped Liaris so much during her childhood in that house. The maid told Liaris to have a safe journey and to be careful. Liaris remembered all the memories she shared with the maid. It was this woman who had taught her how to survive on her own. Liaris sincerely thanked her for everything she had done, which made the maid emotional. With a sad look on her face, Liaris told the maid that if she was going to continue serving this household, then she should forget about her because she was no longer going to stay in this house. She knew that perhaps she would never be able to see her again. The maid interrupted Liaris in the middle of her sentence and told her that she would never forget her. She stepped closer and suddenly hugged her, reminding Liaris of the bond they had shared during her childhood. The maid had been the only genuinely kind person to her in that entire house. Liaris then stepped outside and saw that Prince Edward was waiting for her. She had not expected him to wait for her like that. They left together, and inside the carriage, Edward noticed that Liaris was looking out of the window at the house where she had lived her entire life. He held her hand and assured her that she had made the right choice and would not regret it. Liaris felt that his hands were warm and comforting. Maybe it was all right for her to hope for a better future ahead. I am hoping all is good for our princess. This could be the new beginning for her. Let's see what challenges she is going to have in future and how she will overcome them. I just hope Prince Elrish be by her side and take care of her. Let's see what will happen in the next part. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.